Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to Raw Knuckles podcast. Please like, follow, and subscribe.
There
it is. There it is.
We were just talking about how annoying you are to play against, I heard.
I never played against you, Stapes.
No, I know. I'm just a friend. I know someone that played against you.
You were way too fast for me anyway.
When I stepped on the ice, I never backed down, and I never stayed down.
And I was vicious, and I was malicious, and I don't care.
I'm alive. He's a freaking madman. Look at him going to town.
All right, Lee, welcome to the Raw Knuckles podcast. Tim and I are glad that you joined us today. Awesome stuff. Let's get to it. You know, had a long career, National Hockey League, sometimes up, sometimes down. Played for quite a few teams, 7 teams in 15 years in the NHL. Drafted 62nd overall, 1979, by the Nordiques, Quebec Nordiques.
Oui.
But what I want to ask you, you're born in Oakland. What if your mom and dad don't pick up and leave to Michigan? Do you think you ever play in the NHL?
Oh, absolutely not. It was one of those things that never knew my dad, so it was my grandfather and my grandma who, when he retired from the military, they asked him to go to Detroit, where they were building tanks at the time on 8 Mile, and that's how I ended up in Michigan. And not having a father, some guy at the PTA meeting, my mom was a teacher, said, your son might like to play this game hockey. From California. We knew nothing about hockey. I don't even think the Golden Seals were there yet. But put a stick in my hand and off I went. I was gone, and that became my love.
So,
what
up,
organization? Where did you come through, like the AAA and eventually and all that? In Michigan?
The first few years I played in Trenton Hockey Association. My first coaches were Del Gallifero and Eric Steinhauer. These were 2 guys that were really instrumental in, getting me into the game, getting me, teaching me the game. And but it was in the minor, just house league hockey. And then when I was a Bantam, I finally made what they called back then an open team. And but the coach, Joe Stoneburner was his name, told me I was too stupid to be a defenseman, so he put me on as a forward, and which was one of those crazy things, as you guys would know, drove me to study the game, study the players, because there was no way I was going to be too stupid to play defense. So there went the obsession, and I started really studying the game. Next year, I went to a new team that played in the Bantam Open League, and then the following year, I went to Little Caesars program, which is a AAA program, and played 2 years there. Captained the team, captained a national championship team, and while we were playing, we do a lot of tournaments.
Was that midget or Bantam?
Midget.
What was it?
Midget.
AAA, because
AAA
Little
midgets.
Caesars, CompuWare, there's a bunch of them.
Oh
now,
yeah, Slazers, CompuWare, and the list of guys that have come out of there, is just amazing. It's there's a lot of Hall of Famers as opposed to Hall of Shamers that came out of that program in the Michigan AAA. But I got scouted to Hull, Quebec. We were doing a Hull tournament, and I got scouted, and the coach who was coaching Hull festivals at the time was Pronovo, Jean, the old Hall of Famer.
Marcel? Jean Pronovo?
Yeah, and so I thought, who would be better to learn from than him? So I ended up going as an underage to Hull to play. And that was right in the middle of the French-English War, too, if you remember back then. And,
yeah, I do.
And
I do. That was it's actually, the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah,
That's when I come up here.
76, 77.
No. So, when I look at that, certainly I grew up for the States, a hockey hotbed, in Boston, New England area was a hotbed. Minnesota was. Was it always that way in Michigan? Listen, the Wings have been around forever. They've had a strong backing, but youth hockey, did it really take off with Little Caesars and stuff? Or was it pretty big before Little Caesars?
There was always good hockey organizations, but when Little Caesars came in, all of a sudden there was some money behind the youth hockey, and it quickly elevated. Prior to that, there was like Paddock Pools and Slazers, which were little companies that were sponsoring teams. But when Little Caesars came in, they went right across the board with every age group, A division, triple A division, the whole 9 yards. And they were willing to do some traveling to go to different tournaments. And for a lot of guys, that was what we wanted to do, was, the exposure in the tournaments. Some of them were just starting, back in 77, 76. In that time, the colleges weren't getting scouted a lot for NHL. After the 1980 Olympics, when the U.S. won the gold, then all of a sudden they started getting scouted. And that was my Olympic year, actually, 1980. I was 20 years old, and they told me I was a pro because I was playing juniors, making $60 a week food money. So I missed the Olympics, never watched the Olympics after that. And I guess.
Why? Were you bitter?
Oh, big time bitter. Big time bitter. I could, I look at all those guys winning gold and everything else, and being in America.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Who took your spot?
Oh, all of them.
Your Rizzioni?
No, Ramsey. Mike.
No, he was too smart to play defense.
Who? Russo?
Rizzioni. Rizzo was too smart to play defense. Okay, you have to be dumb to play defense
on the ice. You know that.
So you don't get picked for the Olympics. You're pissed off. Listen, I did a local tryout for that team.
Yeah.
Okay, and 78, I believe it was 79. They had local tryouts in New England. I went to one. I played with a kid, Bobby, here, and I forget who our other player was, but we ripped it up in that thing. And all I ever heard is, guys, why even bother going? It's picked already. It's political, blah, blah, blah. So BU was a big team, Jack Parker in the East, and Herb Brooks from Minnesota in the West. And they said the team's already picked. I'm like, that can't be. There's no way. I didn't want to believe that. So I go to the tryout. We ripped it up. We had a great tryout. Bobby and I didn't even get to go to Colorado to the sports festival, where that's the next step.
Right.
And I was like bummed out. I'm like, what the hell? So I started believing, okay, there's got to be some politics in this. And there was. Now, was I pissed off? I ended up going off to Camp Montreal. They win the gold medal. I was happy as hell for them. But I said to myself, obviously they picked the right team, right?
Oh, they did.
Hello.
Yeah.
They did. And, it was the reason they gave me was that I was a professional. I was playing juniors at the time.
Okay.
I didn't have the academic credentials to be going to college anyway. And there weren't many kids coming out of college at that time anyway. So when I made my decision back in 77 to go play juniors, it was based on my best chance to become a pro hockey player. Because, at 8 years old, I decided that's what I wanted to do. And, everyone would come up to my mom and say, oh, that's so cute. Your son thinks he wants to be a hockey player. Don't they know that American kids aren't hockey players? It's a Canadian game. And
right.
Then I was still doing it when I was 13, 14 years old. And they were saying, the same people were saying, don't you think you should get them some help? And,
because a lot of the Little Caesars guys, they go to college route, right? I mean,
oh, absolutely. They go play. They play in their midgets and the USHL, I think it is, juniors, and then they're looking for college scholarships. Which, if I had to do it again, I would definitely go to school. I would definitely go the academic route, simply for the fact that I remember the first time I had knee surgery. and going into surgery. And I was thinking, if this doesn't go right, what am I going to do? And no education, no background, and what am I
Nothing to fall back on.
Nothing to fall back on. And that was one of the things that really, I don't want to say tormented me, but was in the back of my mind throughout my whole career. If you don't recover, I had 11 surgeries during my pro career, so that's a lot of surgeries. And if you don't come back, what are you going to do, Lee? It was tough. So the college route is, if you can get an education, get a grip on that, I mean, it's a great way to go. These kids now,
if you're good enough, you're going to play in the NHL, whether you're in college, junior, or wherever, especially today, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It's
absolutely.
more so today.
There's
a better chance.
I'll give you a tidbit on the 1979 draft. That draft was the Wayne Gretzky year when the WHA and the NHL merged. And because of Wayne was playing in the WHA and Rob Ramage and a lot of other guys that were, and they didn't know how to do it, bring them together and the teams keep their players. So they had 6 rounds, and it was the first year you could take 19-year-olds, which I got drafted in the 3rd round, 62, was it? Thank you.
Yeah.
Pick taken, I think I was the 11th underage pick taken in that, which means I would have been a first rounder in my draft year, which, as we all know, what first rounders get is a lot more patience and a few more dollars. But it was the highest percentage of players played in the NHL by a landslide. It's like 80-some%, 81% of us all played.
So your draft year was great.
91.
Your draft year.
79 was a great draft year. By 20 plus percentage points over any other. I went behind.
Now
Michelle,
a lot of people don't know this.
What's that?
Yeah, a lot of people don't know this. That Gretzky, playing for the Oilers that season, WHA, right? He, as part of the merger agreement between the NHL and the WHA, Gretzky was to have become eligible for the 79 draft due to already having played professionally in WHA. But he had a personal services contract with the Oilers owner, Peter Pocklington, and he didn't have to go in the draft. He would have ended up probably with the Colorado Rockies, right?
I think that would probably.
They had that first pick.
That would have been a pretty good first pick,
right? And they ended up with Rob Ramage instead. There
was Hartsburg in there, and Rammer, and
Foligno, Gottner, Vive, Hartsburg, Keith Brown, Ray Bork, Laurie Boschman, Tom McCarthy, Mike Ramsey, Paul Reinhardt, Doug Sullivan, Brian Propp, Brad McCrimmon, Jay Wells, Dwayne Sutter, Ray Allison, Jimmy Mann, Michelle Goulet, Kevin Lowe. That's the first 21. And they all played in the NHL. That is an incredible draft year, right? That's incredible.
It was phenomenal. And, I remember going up to, and the funny side of this story is, so with my first year in junior in Hull, Quebec, I was getting my ass kicked off the ice more than I was on the ice.
Wait a second. Wait. The transition, you go up to Hull.
I go up to Hull and play junior A.
So when you say you're getting your ass kicked off the ice, tell us how that was happening.
Well, I go to school, and the French-English war is going on, and these French guys wouldn't even let me tell them I'm an American and I got no part in the war.
And they don't care.
And they don't care. And they just
You're an Anglo.
In school, and I was getting my ass kicked. Finally, and once I got there, it was funny because Jean Pronovo took the job in Buffalo. So the reason I went there, all of a sudden, he went to Buffalo in the NHL to coach, and a guy named Norm Burrell was the GM, and who'd they bring in? Guy Tracier, little French guy. And Guy couldn't speak any English. And
c'est pas anglais, Carlis?
Oui. And, and this was going on. end of the year, I tore my knee out and went back home and just said, I can't do this anymore. I'm not going back there to play. And Oshawa had drafted me the year before, so I went to play for the Generals in the OHL. And so I was jumped leagues because I was an American. They would allow me to do that. And had a good year there. Like 28 goals and 50-some.
When you were drafted by Quebec, were you like, fuck? Like you had to go
exactly what happened, too. Exactly
like
what
they
happened.
show you on the
I said,
TV.
I just got out of here, and what the? You're going to draft me? I remember when my agent called me and said, you're probably going to go to the Nordique. And I said, anywhere but there. Anywhere but there.
He started taking like UFC classes.
Oh, my God. And I ended up there, and it was interesting. It was really interesting to get put back in there. But with the Quebec, the people knew the players up there. So when you were there, they didn't care. You were just Nordique. And
so off the ice wasn't so bad.
Yeah, so off the ice wasn't so bad. I wasn't going to school at 20 years old. And it was a different situation. Funny thing is, my coach who drafted me was Jacques Demers.
Okay.
Jacques Demers, when I got there, got fired. And Petit Tiger, what's his name?
Oh, Michel Bergeron took over.
Michel Bergeron took over, and another guy.
Charlie Tifo.
And he was after.
Okay.
But Bergeron, and I got called up to Quebec and to play in Philadelphia. And Bergeron comes up to me and says, "Hey, Lee, you're going to play a lot tonight. You better be ready to bang, bang." And I was all excited. Here's my chance. I'm going to play.
So bang, bang, did that mean fight?
Yeah.
Did it mean hit?
Hit and fight, play the way I play. I just, I'm not a tough guy. I'm just a guy who competes and,
You're a prick on the ice.
Yeah.
That would be a nicer word for it than a lot of guys used.
Okay.
But so third period coming around, and I haven't even seen the ice yet.
Oh.
He puts me out with like 3 minutes left in the game, and I think I get in a stick swinging duel with Al Hill of Flyers, and get booted out of the game. And I'm 20-year-old kid, and I'm just what is good? He told me I was going to play, and I'd never played a shit. And I'm upset. He comes in behind me. "Yeah, you remember me from Three Rivers?" And I said, "Yeah," because he tried to get me to come to Three Rivers from Hull. And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Yeah, good." Set me down, and that was it.
So that was your first year that he sent you down?
Yep.
You went down to Hershey?
I went down to Hershey and played for Brian Murray in Hershey.
So you played there, Brian Murray for Hershey. Then you come back to Quebec the following year, camp, played 2 games, then go to Fredericton.
Had knee surgery.
And then, and then Brian Murray.
Brian Murray came.
Was he in Washington? He brought you?
Brian Murray was one of my favorite hockey coaches and people, actually. I love Brian Murray. The only coach who traded me twice, but he came to Binghamton to watch me play after I rehabbed my knee and everything from surgery that year, and said, "Can you play in the NHL?" I said, "You give me a chance to play, and I'll play." And next day they traded for me, and I went to Washington. He had gotten the job with the Capitals at the time, and that year that I played, I think it was 26 games with the Caps, and had 8 goals and 10 assists, 126 minutes in penalties, and was became a fan favorite, and me and a guy named Torrey Robertson, and we were kind of
tag team.
What's that?
The tag team.
Yeah.
The 2 of you.
And Torrey
providing the muscle.
Torrey was a lot tougher than I, and we had Randy Holt sitting on the bench too. Little Randy, who had the long gray hair, looked like he was 50 years old, but had a real big left, and he just threw it like a jackhammer. But I had a great season, and then they had the Save the Caps thing the next year, where the Capitals were in financial problem, and there was a big to-do, and they asked me to come back, and they had drafted Scott Stevens, made a trade for Rod Langway and Brian Engblom. And,
Yeah, I remember that.
And it was supposed to be Rod Langway and Engblom and myself, and Scott Stevens anchoring the defense at that point, based on my stats from the year before. And I got jumped by 3 guys in Georgetown outside of a bar and almost killed.
Oh, a bar?
Yeah. I was out.
You were in a bar?
I was in a bar, yeah.
Oh,
Hard to
okay.
believe. But
Yeah, it's hard to believe. If you're like me and you're going to play some golf this summer, you have to check out this hidden gem. Windmill Heights sits atop the beautiful hills in Notre Dame de Perot. They have affordable rates and they offer customized membership opportunities for all levels. If you want to book a tee time, call 514-453-7177. Hit them straight. If you love your pet like I love my St. Bernard Adele, you'll want to feed them a balanced, biologically appropriate raw diet. The reason I've chosen Formula Raw is because all blends of their food are locally sourced and they consist of exclusively human-grade meat and organs, as well as fruits and vegetables. And all products used are hormone and antibiotic free. So like I said, if you love your pet like I love Adele, you'll choose Formula Raw. Make sure you go to formularaw.com and use the promo code RawKnux at checkout to receive 10% off your first order. That's RawKnux, RawKnux. You know what I want to ask you about the Washington part, though, before that trade?
Yeah.
Now, Rick Green came over in that Langway trade.
Yeah.
Okay? Greeny came over. And I had talked to Greeny, and I knew Ryan Walter. He's my teammate. I love Ryan Walter.
Great guy.
Yeah. Now, Greeny always told me about the Lions and the Lions
We
and whatever.
interviewed him, right, Rick?
Yeah. They had that one group that a lot of born again Christians on the Capitals.
Couple of them.
The Lions and the Christians. There was like 5 guys that were born again Christians, and the rest were like living like crazy hockey players, I guess. And Greeny said it kind of split the team up. Did you get that feeling when you were down there? And when Murray came, did he straighten all that out?
No. Brian was there when already. But they never pushed the Christian or the believing stuff.
Okay, so they weren't preaching.
Oh, no, you know Ryan. That wasn't Ryan's.
No, I know at that time, but when the group together, Greeny always felt like the team was kind of split because of that.
Well, and that's, I think, there was Dennis Marouk and myself and, a whole bunch of Curry and a bunch of guys,
that used to go out and have fun.
Corey, and we tear it up.
You were the Christians?
Just tear it up, and I don't think we really cared much what the other guys were doing. Well, when it came to game time, we tried to play. We came to play, and that was all. And besides that, we were taking care of the other guys, the Mike Gartners and the Ryan Walters and whomever else was in that group. Back then you knew what your job was and you did your job, and I was in a unique position because I played on the power play, I played on the penalty killing, I played a regular shift at that point, and but after I got jumped outside the bar in some place I shouldn't have been at the time, it was closing time, back when I had long hair.
Closing time.
Exactly. 3 guys mistook me for the bouncer who kicked him out and nearly killed me. Shattered my jaw.
So what happened there?
was
So
that
you get
bad,
beat up.
huh?
I got beat up really bad. I was in intensive care for 4 days. And the first thing I remember was Roger Crozier, the GM, calling me and saying, "Well, you'll have to make the hockey team now." My jaw's all wired and everything else, and I went down to 178 pounds. They forced me.
So what happened from there?
They
So
sent
you
me
get
down
out of
to
the
the minors
hospital.
again. They sent me.
You went to the minors.
and
So you went down to Hershey.
yeah, and
You go to Hershey, and you play the rest of the year in Hershey. Next year, you're in St. Catharines.
they traded
And
me to
then-
St. Catharines because they never thought I'd play tough again after the ass beating I got.
Yeah.
And that goes back to what I said earlier. About the college education, something to fall back on sure would have been nice. And so they decided.
So you go off to St. Louis after your stint in St. Catharines,
Well,
right? Yeah,
again-
Peoria.
Again, it's one of those things that I'm playing in St. Catharines. We get in, and Carpenter, the guy coached in Jersey.
Oh yeah, the redheaded guy.
Yeah, the little
Doug
redhead guy,
Carpenter?
and told me, hey, listen, you put together a good second half of the season. If I get a job, because his name's being floated for jobs, and he tells me he'd give me take me with him if he went, and so I played really well in St. Catharines, and he gets a job in New Jersey. I call him up and, "Hey, Dougie, remember me?" He goes, "No, I don't." Thanks. But anyway, hangs up. So I'm sitting in St. Catharines, Ontario, playing softball during the summer, and because that was I loved playing baseball, and softball was just kind of. But we won the Ontario provincials, and I was sitting in the bar one night, not knowing where I'm going, because Toronto called me and said, "We have no use for you, and we're not going to give you a contract, not going to offer you a contract." So I'm sitting there. My wife's pregnant, due within a month, and one of the guys on my softball team says, "My uncle, he coaches down in Peoria, Illinois, in the IHL." And back then it was the National Hockey League and the American Hockey League, and then the IHL. And I'm just looking at myself and my career just going right down the shitter. And, I'm just saying, "Oh, God, jeez." Anyway, the next morning, I get a phone call from Jacques Demers and says, "You go to Peoria and play well, I'll give you a chance." And Jacques was the guy who drafted me to Quebec Nordiques. And he said, "I'll give you a chance to make St. Louis Blues if you play well in Peoria." And so I went down to Peoria, and I think I had close to 80 points that year, 300
Yeah, you
minutes and
did.
penalties, and
77. That's what a year that is.
yeah. And we won everything. Got voted best defenseman, and I had a great group of guys with me. It was the first year that the NHL had a direct tie to the International Hockey League, so they were calling guys up and down, and.
They're still part of St. Louis, aren't they?
Yes,
Peoria?
yeah, absolutely.
I played against them, and yeah. Crazy.
So had a great year there, and Jacques, being true to his word, invited me to camp with St. Louis Blues, and thank God for Barclay Plager. He some reason he liked me, and I made the team that year. And it wasn't really until the February came in where you start pushing for the playoffs, and Rob Ramage got hurt, and who's our captain or one of the assistant captains at the time, and one of the big players logged a lot of ice time, and I got a chance to step in and play his minutes, and all of a sudden in the playoffs it was made my career. There was a guy named Wendell Clark who I always say made my NHL career, because he was knocking everybody out that year, his first year in pros with Toronto Maple Leafs, and we had a playoff series with them, and I did okay with Wendell in 2 or 3 fights we had that playoff series. And, and the funny thing is, I'm arguing over $5,000 with the St. Louis Blues. Meanwhile, Jacques Demers signs with the Detroit Red Wings, Red Wings trade for me. All of a sudden, my salary doubles, and I'm back with Jacques. And Jacques was super guy, and I can't say enough good things about him. But Jacques was not what I'd call the greatest coach, but he loved guys that could just go out and would play the game, just play it because they loved the game. And if you ever notice, he always loves his old players because they just go play. And
did you grow up a Red Wings fan? Were you a huge Red Wings fan?
Oh, I grew up.
Up?
That's what I wanted.
So what was
to do.
that like? Where you just was this like a dream come true? I bet.
This was larger than life for me. I mean, it's like when Nutsy went back to Boston. They just all of a sudden home.
Not quite the same, but
yeah.
I was near the end. You was still right in your prime.
Well, I was just
right
starting to actually get into it, and they were the Dead Wings the year before. And I remember coming across the ice, and Stevie Yzerman, this would have been 95, I think, was cutting across, and I caught him. And as he tried to cut back and broke his collarbone, and had to fight all the idiots on Detroit at the time. And
when was that? When you were in St. Louis, you hit Yzerman?
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Okay. So you come to Detroit now. How did they treat you?
Well, it was Stevie and I can't say enough good things about Steve Yzerman. Stevie is just one of the best people I know, besides being a phenomenal hockey player. And it was just one of those things that the culture in Detroit was such that, the Dead Wings, and I'll throw a tidbit in here. My first wife's father, Jim Bishop, who had lacrosse fame and everything else, started the pro lacrosse league with the Norris family, but he hired Ned Harkness, which began Darkness with Harkness in Detroit when the teams just were absolutely at the bottom of the basement. And so I got there, and I'm not saying because I got there, but Jacques got there, and it changed a lot of the attitudes, all of a sudden, we're going to change. Stevie's attitude changed from, say like Willie Huber and Donnie Murdoch and those guys to, he wanted to fulfill his.
When does the Itlich family come in? What year was that?
That was in 77, I think, 78.
So when did things start to change there? Was it that year when Yzerman come?
Yeah.
Well, that was the building block. But again, there were, I'm not going to go into the stories, but,
Well, that's what we want.
Yeah, what was...
Well,
You're going to fucking hold shit from us?
in my experience that, there were guys like Donnie Murdoch and Willie Huber and guys like that, they had other ideas besides just playing hockey. They were off-ice nightmares for the coaching staff. And we got rid of them. Yzerman got his shoulder busted by, a check by me. He went back home and trained his ass off, came back into camp just in amazing shape. I remember Jacques Demers asking me, who should I make captain? And I said, who's your best player? And he said, Steve Yzerman. I said, that's your captain. And Stevie all of a sudden turned all his attention to being the player that he wanted to be. I mean, he was scoring 60 goals. I mean, I was watching him go through people, dancing through people and stuff like that. And meanwhile, we had a really tough team. I mean, we had guys like Bob Probert and Joey Kosher, Basil McRae on our team, Steve Martinson. I mean, we got McClellan later. I mean, we had a lot of really, by the time they got down to me, I was fighting guys like Eddie Olczyk. I mean, it was just, it was one of those things that it was an interesting year. And but it all of a sudden turned around. We made the playoffs that year. We went to the semis and lost out to Edmonton. And Edmonton won the Stanley Cup that year. Then we looked, and then again, we had a phenomenal team. And the whole attitude on the team turned out, it wasn't.
You played 16 games that year in the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And, it was awesome. And Jacques, you know, I'm not, I make fun of it, but, you know, my job became with it, whether it was with Rick Zombo or Gilbert Delorme, who I think you might have played with in
Yeah, I played
Montreal.
with Jill.
I love Gilly. And
Good guy.
And Rick Zombo, I think he's coaching out in Lakewood in Missouri right now, which went Division I college team. But Rick and we were given the task to check all the top players. And it was one of those things, you know. So you get every time Gretzky was out there, I was out there. Every time Lemieux was out there, I was out there. You know, all those guys. You know, and and we always laughed, me and a couple of the boys, saying, "Yep, they're all in the Hall of Fame, and I'm in the Hall of Shame." So I guess I didn't do my job very well.
Was Doug Shed in there? Were you with Doug?
Shedsy. His nickname was Empty.
Empty. He was my coach for like 4 years in pro.
Oh my God, Shedsy was he was just one of those great guys. You know, loved it. Harold Schneps was there. Michael
Schnepsy.
Wait, why was his nickname Empty? What was it? Why was his nickname Empty?
Because his beer can was always empty. Every time you asked him how was his beer, he'd go empty. So we nicknamed him Empty.
And yours was full? Your can was full?
Mine was overserved with that group. I'll tell you what, I played with a lot of hard living players, but there was never a group like that. It was.
So his was empty, and you had like 5 of them half empty.
Yeah, his was blackout.
Yeah, that was more, you know. But knock on wood, I never. It was. Let's put it this way: it was managed at that time. It was.
Oh, it never interfered with your play on the ice. Okay.
Well, and it was funny because I'll tell you a story. I get called in during the summer of '88. And Jacques Demers and Jimmy Devellano called me.
You had
in.
to take a breathalyzer?
No, they didn't. They called me in the middle of the summer, called me into the office, and they said, "Lee, we want you to set an example. You're always setting up all these events and parties and things like that, where we're going when you're in town. We want you to set an example for our young guys like Bobby and Steve Chason and, you know, Jeff Sharples and all these young guys that they had huge hopes for, Joey Kosher and I walked in there listening to this, and I just looked at him. I said, "Is there something wrong with my play?" And they say, "No, you're our top defenseman, and you know, we think that you can set a good example for these young kids." And I said, "What's in it for me?" And they looked at
You want to raise. You want to raise.
They wanted you to mix in a water once in a while.
And they turned around, and what they did was they said, "We'll give you a brand new 3-year contract and make you the highest paid player." Wow. I said, "I don't drink anymore."
So they did. Did you stop drinking?
I stopped drinking.
Okay.
3 years.
Oh, wow.
3 years I stopped drinking. I set up all the same things. I just never drank.
No way.
Oh, but I also got named what they nicknamed me was Grumpy Bear, because I became a very grumpy individual. Because you know, that was part of, you know, when I was growing up, that was just part of the lifestyle. You know,
how difficult? Listen, I grew up in that too, right? That lifestyle was big: drinking, playing hockey, play hard, drink hard, all that. Yeah. Now you stopped for those 3 years. How difficult was that for you? Did you know, being around it all the time, setting up all those team things? Wasn't that difficult for you? Like the temptation?
It was, and I wish I knew then what I know now. But it was like being isolated and being, you know. There were a lot of trying moments in it, but you know, one thing, it was if it's going to help, you know, one, it was helping my pocketbook. Two, if it's going to help the team, you know, I was willing to do whatever it took to help the team, and it was kind of funny because I didn't really think about it, and I had some of my best years. You know, I had 42 points one year, you know, 100 and whatever, you know, and it was one of those things that I didn't really think about it. All I thought about was how it was going to help the team, but I didn't know what I was doing. I was setting an example. Okay, I'm grouchier than all. I was ill mood every day, it seemed. But it was just one of those things that and when players and then in practice was where it was the worst, because players would screw it up and and I'd get pissed off and start running them and things like that, and it was
So you spent 4 years there, all right? You're 90, 91, 21 games, and then it's off to New Jersey. Finally, dream comes true. You get to go to New Jersey.
Oh my God! It was funny, and it's funny because Brian Murray's now coach, and
in Jersey?
In Detroit.
In Detroit,
he gets hired in Detroit, and I'm excited because I like Brian. I think Brian's a really good coach.
But he doesn't like you?
Not so much that. I think it was. Well, I'll tell you the honest truth. My contract is coming towards a close. I'm going to have a new contract at the end of the year. And I picked up a drink, and all of a sudden it was over. Brian Murray seen my behaviors when I was in Hershey and things like that. In Washington, there was alcohol involved. I was at the bar, drunk, that night when I got jumped. And all of a sudden, whether it's warranted or not, I got labeled as a party guy. And so Murray, we're in New Jersey playing one night. I'm with St. Louis, and we're playing one night, and Troy Crowder knocks out Proby in a heavyweight bout.
I remember that.
Yeah. And it's all the buzz. And I knock out John McClain in an open ice hit at center.
Good. I don't like him.
And all of a sudden, Lou Lamoriello gets, as it was told to me, gets bringing the idea that they need the kind of toughness on D, and so I get traded to New Jersey, and for Paul Eisenbart, who was a real good minor league player and was just starting to come along in the NHL, and had some good years in Detroit. And Icy's a great guy. He's a horse guy, loves his horses, and so I'm off to New Jersey. One night I'm fighting a guy. We're in Philadelphia. We're in Jersey. And, Danico's fighting. Who is he fighting? Berube, I think. And I was fighting a kid. It'll come to me. But he caught me in the side of my arm came out. I had a shoulder injury from a thing with Marty McSorley in L.A. And my shoulder came out. Dale Kushner, just caught me right in there and fractured my orbital zygoma. So I missed most of the season. The rest of the season was, 30 games, whatever it was, with a fracture and had to fix my shoulder.
Yeah.
And
that's Jersey.
And that was
so
in New
you're
Jersey.
out most of the season.
And then we come back, and we had a good team. And I think it was the year Pittsburgh won their first cup. We're playing Pittsburgh in the playoffs, and I come back, and we're up 3-1 in the series, I think it was. And I'll tell you a funny story. We're up 3-1 in the series, and we give up a 3-on-1 to Yager, Lemieux, and Joey Mullen.
Are you the one?
I am. Okay. And Lemieux, and Lemieux was the toughest guy to defend just because he was so big and so talented and so strong. And he dishes it over to Yager, and Yager rings it off the post. Tommy McVie is coaching. We end the period. We're up 3-1 in the game. We're up in the series 3-1. And Tommy McVie comes in screaming, just absolutely losing his mind. And if you don't know Tommy, he had that voice like God was talking to you, gravelly voice. And he comes in, Jesus Christ, what do you do on a 3-on-1? That's so freaking stupid, blah, blah, blah. And then for whatever reason, he turns to Troy Crowder and he says, Troy, what the fuck do you do on a 3-on-1? And Troy just kind of looked up without even breaking a smile. He says, well, usually, Tommy, I try to scooch down the bench a little so I can get a better view. Brendan Shanahan and Bruce Driver, we just all start laughing. Tommy spins. We lose the game 4-3. We lose the series 4-3. That was it. So trying to figure out a new contract, and my wife at the time, she didn't like New Jersey, and so I didn't want to sign. And then he sent me up to Hartford for the Whale, with Jimmy Roberts was coaching. He took over for
Cheetah.
Huh?
Cheetah.
Too slow, too slow. That's all he ever freaking said.
Cigar, always with the cigar.
Oh my God!
Right?
And I was there. I sat for 6 games, and then they played me for 6 games, and then Brian Sutter was. Bob Berry or Brian Sutter was coach of St. Louis at the time, and they traded for me again, and I went back to St. Louis. And
Okay.
and I ended up in St. Louis playing, and St. Louis was a great town. I enjoyed playing in St. Louis. And then all of a sudden, we're playing in Detroit one night, and Konstantinov ran Craig Janney. So I'm chasing Konstantinov all over the ice. We're up 3-0 or something like that, whatever. And I was chasing.
Was Shanahan there too at the time?
Shanny was on the Blues. Shanny was on the Blues at the time.
With you?
Yep.
Okay,
yeah.
with Janny?
Yep.
Okay.
And so I'm chasing Konstantinov, and Dino Cicerelli grabs me, and I pop Dino, and he lets go of me. Chason grabbed me. I popped him. He lets go of me. Stevie Eiserman, who I just,
Who you love.
who I love.
You can't pop him.
Great guy. And I say, Stevie, I'm going to count to 3, and then I'm going to hit you. And Stevie just says, you don't have to. And let go of me. Ends up,
Good.
we win the game. Game's over. And the big thing is Bob Probert and I are going to fight on Saturday because we're playing a home and home. Thursday, Friday, we fly back to St. Louis in the morning. We practice. And then Saturday night, it's supposed to be a bout between Bobby and I, because Bobby's going to be the protector, which he did pretty damn well. And we fly back to St. Louis. It's beautiful. I practice. It's 70 degrees out, and I figure, you know what? I'm going to go over to Brendan Shanahan's house, get my motorcycle out, take it for a ride. So I get out there, and I'm not paying attention, and all of a sudden, I hit a guide wire coming down from a telephone pole, snaps my handlebars, and I'm sober as a judge, and I go flipping over, land on my feet. I blow my foot right off my leg, compound fracture. My foot's going one way, my leg's going another way, and I'm laying all twisted up, and the bike's on top of me. They get the bike off me, and this is no lie, hand to God. First thing in my mind, I don't care how good they take this, I'm not going to be able to play tomorrow night. I got plate and 8 screws in there, and Proby in his book says I was afraid of him, and that's why I did it, so I didn't have to fight him.
I guess not.
Yeah. And then basically that was the end. Once you start losing half a step, even of course you start reaching, and it was over. And then all of a sudden injuries started happening, even more routine than they were, and before I knew it, I was out of a job.
Were you done? Was your season done that year? Obviously, when you got.
Oh yeah, I was done, and
just done.
And then they went on strike. And I signed again the next year, and Brian Sutter took over from Barry as coach, and was having a good season. And then all of a sudden, the young kids are coming in, and if I got a point every other game, and was checking the top lines, that was a pretty good season for me. And I was going about it, and then all of a sudden, Brian thought, who do you bring in? Stefan Quintel and Murray Barron and some lot bigger guys. I mean, bigger defensemen to shore up the.
So you go to Calgary from there, and you finish out in Calgary, right?
And that was
93,
just a
94.
favor. That was a favor from the GM in Calgary at the time, who was hired originally by my ex-wife's father, Jim Bishop, in Detroit.
Who was the GM?
What was his name?
Was it Coates?
Yeah.
Coates.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you go to Calgary, finish up there, and didn't
My
you retire?
My ankle is so bad, and I went down and caught a rut and tore a labrum tear in my hip. And this is back when they didn't, know about the labrum tears, and then it just wouldn't get better and wouldn't get better. I could walk, I could run, I could do all that, but when you do that skating stride, it'd pull right over my hip. And I told Coach, I said, listen, I'm going to go back to Michigan and think about this for a while because they're talking about surgery and everything else. And so I went back home. This is great. I should write a book on this one. I grab one of my motorcycles and go down to Bike Week in Daytona. And I'm sitting on the beach with my motorcycle and my brother-in-law. I let him have one of my motorcycles. We're sitting on the beach, and their phone's ringing. And it's Calgary. And I don't want to answer this. I don't want to answer. Finally, after the second day of the phone ringing nonstop, I answer the phone. Yeah. He says, hey, Lee, we're going to make the playoffs. We want you to go to San Diego and get in shape. And I said, well, if you ship my bike to San Diego, I'll go. So they shipped my motorcycle to San Diego, and I went to San Diego. First game I played, I caught a rut, my ankle. I caught a rut head first into the boards out. And then I did play in the playoffs. And, and I don't know, I think we lost out in the semi. We lost out to Atlanta.
You played 8 games in that year in the playoffs.
Yeah, I played 8 games. We
with the
lost to
Gulls.
Atlanta. I think I played 1 game in the regular season for San Diego, and got hurt. And it was, then I just hung out looking for a coaching job. And I think I played for the Vipers and the Wolves for 25-game tryouts. And then I got...
So you finished with the Dragons in 96, 97.
Yeah.
And what goes on now post-career? Listen, just my own experience, I had a very difficult time transitioning out of hockey into the real world. I struggled. There's no question about it. Bunch of surgeries. I got addicted to pain medication. One thing led to another. Before I know it, I was rock bottom. I didn't know what to do or where to go. You talked about falling back, having that education. I remember I'll go back to my dad telling me, I don't want you leaving school. You're putting all your cherries in one basket. You got an opportunity to get an education here. I quit school. I went and played hockey. I had nothing to fall back on either. Now, what happens?
We're very
in
similar
retirement?
in a lot of regards, Knucksy.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So what happens?
Well, I get called right before training camp, and Bob Bourne gets a job, coaching job, and he was coaching in Central Texas Stampede in the Southern Pacific or whatever the hockey league was. And they asked me if I wanted to coach, and I said, yeah, I'll coach. And so I got down there, right at training camp, stepped in, and I loved it. I really enjoyed coaching, especially the guys. They listened to every word you said, and they really wanted to try and get better. They would love to try and make us jump up to the next level, whatever that was. And a couple of them actually did. And so I'm coaching and enjoying my time down there. And I love Texas. It was great. I love San Antonio. I love Central Texas, where I was, Killeen, Fort Hood, at that area, and Temple. And but all of a sudden, I had gotten a real estate license and wanted to think I knew a little bit about real estate. My best friend was a golf professional, and we'd always thought about what a great way to live your life. Build a golf course, own a golf course. All I have to do is sit out there on the driving range, hit balls, drink a few beers, and I can ask you how you enjoyed your day at the golf course. And back in Michigan. And so that season ended. I went back to Michigan, and I bought 400 acres of property out just west of Detroit in Brighton Township. And Andy and I started working on building the golf course. I was a real estate guy. I developed 125 home sites around the golf course. Andy was brilliant as far as developing a golf course. It's still there.
Wow.
Yeah, and 90.
So what happened? What happened? Did that all? You're a partner in that? It gets going.
Andy and I are partners. I've had 3 guys that were just absolute blessings of friends of Andy's and mine. Very knowledgeable businessmen that helped us out. And then we got a 3rd guy who, let's say, he basically ended up screwing all of us and took $1.3 million out of our operating budget. We opened in 2000 the golf course, and then we had the .com bust, and then we had 9/11, and all the money dried up. And I didn't have that kind of money to bail it out. Neither did Andy. And so it went in foreclosure. A friend of mine ended up buying the golf course, and he runs it still today, called the Huntmore Club. And it's a great golf course. It's just absolutely great golf course. And then I had 100 acres on the golf, because one of the things I did was I separated the land out, deeded all the land the golf course owned free and clear, and put all the debt on the houses. And then just before that, I sold the residential to a national builder, and all of a sudden, the bankruptcy comes for the golf course. I had, this is one of those things I hate to talk about, but it's, because I just wish there was another way, but I had to put all my assets into my second wife's name at the time to protect them, and then she put them into her father's name and kind of, divorced me. And then all of a sudden I'm sitting there 17 years after playing, hockey for 17 years. I had nothing. Had zero. Lost the golf course, lost everything. And then I kind of, like you, my transition to trying to, what am I going to do? Who am I now? Where am I going to go in my life? And, so my drinking elevated and whatnot. And then, then I was voted to be president of the Red Wing Alumni. And one of the things that was good for me was when I was busy with projects. The golf course was like a project. My mind was on that, not what I was thinking about.
Yeah, somewhere to go every day.
Yeah, somewhere to go.
Right?
And then I was there, and then I was coaching at Eastern Michigan University, which was a club team, Division I club team. But, and I was thinking that this would be great if I can get the money together and, get them into a Division I NC2A team, because I got Michigan State right there, I've got Wayne State right there, I've got U of M right there, and then then the powers that be said, no, this is an academic school. I said, all your sports teams lose money. We can make money here and help support your other teams. So that didn't happen. But then I was working also for a construction company, and then one night I was coming home from I was doing an autograph actually during Christmas.
So when's it go bad and when's it turn around?
Well, it was turning around at that time, and that was been 96, 97, I think it was. And I was putting, some things back together, but I put when you played in the game, I put some charity games together with the Boston Bruins, the Montreal Canadiens, and the
I remember
Toronto.
We had a night out. I remember.
Yeah, we did have a night out, and Again, I was overserved that night. Thank you, Knux.
Well,
But
I would have had more if it wasn't for you.
yeah, yeah,
The bastards, they served you a little more than me.
yeah. That was it.
As we were in Detroit.
We were in Detroit, and I knew if we got to, and I was working with the NHLPA trying to get them to buy into creating a NHL alumni league where we play each other twice, home and home, the original six. And, so I was working on that. I was coaching at Eastern, and one of the things I was doing was putting hockey games together like that. And I did that for the fire department to raise money for their, which through my company, that's what I did, was entertain the fire department and police departments and things like that. And I'm on my way home one night from doing an autograph session to raise money for a little girl, 8 years old, terminal cancer, and we were just trying to raise some money, extra money, signing autographs and stuff. 10 o'clock at night, girl going 50 miles an hour texting hits me head on. Half a mile from my house.
Now, were you in a car or a bike?
I was in the car.
Okay.
In the car, yeah. And I had a girl with me, and she was okay. The other girl was okay, thank God. I got thrown out the window and busted my face all up, my knees, 27 surgeries later to put me back together over the next 10 years. My life changed dramatically.
So when do you,
what's that?
So you have that accident, you have all these surgeries. When do you hit rock bottom and make the decision, I need help, I got to get some help?
Well, that was funny because, at that time I'm thinking, of all the things that have happened to me, and it's one of those things that I thought drinking was the only thing that made me feel normal. I was hanging. Yeah. I lost my golf course. I lost everything I owned. I got nothing. And all of a sudden now I'm thinking, God, you've taken away my athleticism. I have artificial knees, artificial hips. I got plates and screws everywhere. I got more metal in my face than the average car. And I used to be as good looking as States, Knuxy.
Yeah,
you know that.
A little bit.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, just having surgery after surgery to fix everything, and it was rehab, more drinking, and then one day one of the surgeries didn't happen so well. They were rebuilding some of the bones and things, trying to fix some issues I had with breathing. Yeah. And I decided I'd get on my motorcycle and take a ride down to the local pub and watch U of M play Michigan State. And I remember it like it was yesterday. And then at 3 o'clock, St. Louis was playing Detroit in Sweden. So I figured I'd just sit there and watch that game. And then the Tigers were playing the St. Louis Cardinals in the baseball for a World Series. So I sat there and watched that game. And I got there at noon. I left there about 11:30 at night, October. Rainy, cold, sleet, snow, one of those. And I'm going down Michigan Avenue on my motorcycle. And next thing I know, I was sliding across 2 lanes of oncoming traffic on my motorcycle. And I slid under the truck. Bike was destroyed. Not a thing happened to me. This is where it gets great. This is, as I always say, God working in my life where, some others may not have been so lucky. But little Asian girl who's a police officer comes up. The first words out of my mouth is, "Do you know who I am?" And she goes, "I don't think I care who you are. I think you're drunk." And I really didn't have a reply for that because I was. And I tried to blame it on the snowy roads and the ice and everything else. And she says, "You can go to the hospital, you can go to jail right now." I said, "I'll go to the hospital, get checked out." So I did. And then
I'll go to jail.
Yeah. Then I'll go back in and check in and everything else. Meanwhile, I'm on the phone because I did a lot of charity work for the Police Association, the Thin Blue Line. I was an honorary member of the Blue Knights, which is a motorcycle club for police.
So you go to the hospital and checked out. Then
checked out, and then I go home, and there's nothing they can do. I'm drunk. They got my blood and everything else, and I got, I've had stories where the blood disappeared before because guys helped me in different situations, but this was one of those things that, and I look back on it as God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself, because I thought I was,
invincible.
And but so that was happening, and now it's Christmas time. My boss from my construction company invites me to his house, and I haven't drank since the motorcycle accident to Christmas. Got a monitor and this and that, and he's got red wine, and I enjoyed red wine. I drank it like a pig, but I wasn't a sipping type of guy, and got drunk. Girlfriend at the time, one of my hostages, takes me home. I look at her in the kitchen. I say, I'm going to quit drinking. Out of the blue. Had no idea how or anything else, and she just kind of chuckled, yeah, sure. Well, a couple days later, I'm sitting on my couch having a cup of coffee, and there's a TV show, and it's talking about the NFL concussions and all these situations these football players are dealing with because of their concussion syndrome, CTE. And I snapped in right away. I said, that's my problem. I've had so many concussions. That's why I do exactly what these guys are doing. The alcohol, the DUIs, bad, I'm mean, I'm angry, I'm this, that, and the other thing. And all of a sudden, that's it. I get on the phone, I call Brian O'Neill at the NHL offices. And I said, Brian, I'm dealing with this and that. I got a DUI, and I could be doing jail time, and I could be doing this, and this is, And he goes, Lee, just sit right there. I have a guy call you in 5 minutes. Don't do anything. 5 minutes later, I get a call from a guy named Dr. Colucci, and he said, never mentioned drinking whatsoever. Talked about we have a place where we can send you with dual diagnosis facility. They never even mention alcohol to me.
Yeah.
And I'm going like, okay, great. We'll take care of your problem with the judge and everything else. And Dr. Colucci worked with the Red Wings. So I'm in front of the judge, and the judge gives me the choice. And I think I'm going for my concussions. He goes, I've never done this for anyone. He's a Ypsilanti judge. He says, you're the only one I've ever done this for. I'm going to give you one choice, and you make it right now. You can start your 1 year in jail, because I've had 2 DUIs within 7 years. In Michigan, it's a year in jail. Or you can go to rehab in Malibu, California for 30 days. But if you ever come back out, I'll put you right in jail. Being the hockey player I am, I made the right choice.
So you go to Malibu.
I went to Malibu. I went to recovery. And all of a sudden, they started talking about the disease of alcohol. And all of a sudden, I'm going like, that may not be the total problem.
This isn't the place for you.
Yeah, this is where I belong, exactly. Mm-hmm. And I did. And, they talk about the promises. On the 29th day, they let me out so I could go watch my son graduate from Arizona State. And then the next day, I flew home to Michigan, went to a meeting that day, and found my sponsor, and Fireman Tom, who lived in Plymouth but was a fire chief in Detroit. And
so what year was that, Lee?
That would have been in, my sobriety date is 12/23 of 09, so it have been
09.
It was 09, yeah.
So up to Malibu, did your son or no one ever was concerned about your drinking, really, or you know what I mean? Did anyone ever talk to you about it?
Timmy, I'll tell you what, I was so mean, nobody would ever cross me. I mean, it just wasn't something that would ever cross. Everybody knew. Yeah. I mean, Fireman Tom, my sponsor.
Everyone knew but you.
Yeah.
Everyone knew but me, and that's what this disease does to you. I mean, I thought drinking was my solution, and it was just helping me get by. Meanwhile, everything in my life was just, if it wasn't bad enough having nothing, you know. So I'm in this is I very rarely talk about this part of it, but there's a thing we call in the program about surrender. We talk about surrendering. Being an athlete, being hockey players, you know, you play right to the last minute. You never quit. You never give in. You know, and surrender just wasn't in their vocabulary. But once I had accepted my plight, my disease, you know, and I was 4 months into the program, and I was going to meetings with Fireman Tom and doing all the right things. He was driving me all up. Great guy. I owe my life to him. And but all of a sudden, I'd had surgery on my hip. I hadn't been to a meeting in a while. One of the many surgeries I had, and all of a sudden, I'm in the shower, and tears start coming down. And I almost, you know, tears start coming down. I'm crying, and I'm trying to figure out why it all is. I haven't cried since I was 15 years old when my grandfather died in my arms at my house, you know, in Michigan. You know, when I was young, I hadn't cried since then. And all of a sudden, I'm crying, and this is an emotion I just don't know really how to handle. Another emotion I don't know how to handle. And I got out of the shower, put a towel around me, and I knew I had no idea how to live as a sober man, and I knew I couldn't go back to my old way of life. And I sat down on the bed, and I reached in my nightstand and pulled out a handgun and was going to fix it. And sure as I was going up to my head and I was going to kill myself, and my phone rang. And I looked down as it's ringing, and it's Fireman Tom's face on the front of my phone. And all of a sudden I said, do I answer it? Do I not answer it? If I don't answer it, will he come over? You know, and ended up, I did answer it. I said, yeah, Tom, what can I do for you? And he said, well, Lee, you know, you haven't been to a meeting in 10 days, and I got 11 guys here, and we're coming over to your house right now. We're going to have a meeting. I just started bawling again. Yeah. I just started bawling again, as if that's not odd and God. I don't know what, you know, which one is it.
So they came over?
They come over. I put the gun down. Never even thought about that as a solution again. And but that moment when he said that, and I get goosebumps thinking about it, I surrendered everything. I surrendered all control. I said, I can't do this anymore. I've got to give this up. I got to give all this, you know, because I thought I could control everything still. Even though I went through rehab and everything else, I thought I still had some bit of control. But I got down on my knees and I just said, God, take it from me. I sat there with these guys as they came over, and, you know, tears rolled down my face, and I got real. And from there, it's just been an absolute blessing. I repaired my relationship with my 2 children. You know, my grandkids will never see their grandpa drink, God willing. And it's just been a blessing for me. But it's so powerful, so baffling, so cunning, as it talks about in the book. It's just, I'm the only one who didn't realize that it was destroying everything I had left.
Yeah.
And, you know, then, you know, come down a few years later, get a settlement from that car accident. You know, and it takes forever to go through the courts and everything. But, you know, I get a settlement more than I made when I played. And, you know, so, you know what? It's been a series of putting my life back together and finding purpose in my life without hockey.
Yeah.
And helping other men in recovery. And, you know, and that's kind of what what I try and do nowadays. And, you know, I took my son and my daughter to the Big House, the University of Michigan, the Big House, for the Toronto Maple Leafs playing the Detroit Red Wings in the outdoor game in January. And it was so cold that day, and it was snow, and it was a wonderful day. But beginning of the second period, I looked at him, I said, I love you both, but I got rods that go up and down both legs inside the bone. And when they get cold, there's no pain like it.
Yeah.
And I said, I got to get out of here because my legs are just, it just gets so painful. So I had to leave. And I told him that night, I said, I'm going to move to Florida. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to deal with the cold anymore. I'm just going to, pack up.
God bless you. And it's good you didn't pull the trigger. And it's good that Fireman Tom and company came over and was there for you, let you flush it all out. And then, but I guess I didn't understand at the beginning. I can't speak for Tim, but I just thought it was about not doing drugs anymore and not drinking, but it's about more than that. That's just a symptom of the real problem. And until you address the real problem, you're spinning your wheels. So someone made me aware of that. I know they have you, and I know they have Tim too. And it's just awesome that you got your life back and you're down in Florida now. What are you doing down in Florida for work?
Well, actually, I'm just finished up a recovery. They had to fix my foot, plate it, and some of the bones and things like that. But hopefully, it feels great. I've been asked to go back to the golf course that I work at in Bonita Bay, which is one of the premier golf courses. They got 5 courses here, and I'm a greeter. Go figure. I say hello to everybody that comes in, and which if anybody who knew me back in the old days, I never spoke. I never talked because I was just, they called me
fucker.
Yeah, no new friends. No new friends. Yeah.
And now it's I can't wait to see all of them. I can't wait to get back to work. But it's amazing. How many people get a chance to redo their life in the middle of the nightmare?
Well, it's never too late, and you're proof of that. I'm proof of that. Tim is. Here's the deal. So, Tim, this winter, you and I have to go down to Florida to get greeted by Lee at the golf course and play some golf, right?
Yeah, and then you and
one of the big perks.
And we're staying at his. We're gonna invite ourselves now. We're staying at his
I thought
place.
we were just gonna greet Lee, and then you and I would go golf.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's how you guys go play golf. I don't know if my game's up to your level.
No, don't worry.
I don't have my own golf cart.
We'd love to be around you. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
But
so we're inviting ourselves now. We're coming down. We're staying at your place.
Yeah.
So we got to save money.
Be here. Otherwise, anytime.
From like November to February, we'll be there.
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds perfect. It's the perk is that I get to play golf with 3 guests anytime that one of the members isn't playing on it.
Cool.
So we got 5 courses to play. And then all summer long we get reciprocals, so we can go anywhere and play for free.
Good stuff.
Oh, it's wonderful, and the folks there are just they're amazing. They're just so nice, and a lot of guys. There's members here that like Davey Gagne.
Oh yeah,
real good player, and he's a good golfer too. But that separates me from my golf game. I love golf. And I had it down to a 7 handicap at one point, but then the injuries start, and you just I can from 150 and I can play.
Well, listen, awesome. You're an awesome man, and you certainly had a rough and tumble life and an awesome career. And to be able to be back on your feet now, living a healthy life, good for you. And you've certainly, I know, helped a lot of people, and you continue to do that. And credit to you for changing your life. And it's just been awesome having you.
Yeah.
I really do appreciate that, Chris. Tim, you shouldn't ask so many questions. I'm just going to tell you that.
I was just in awe. I was just listening to your story. I thought it was amazing. Honestly, I don't think I've ever really heard it in detail, so I appreciate it. Honestly,
that makes two of us.
Holy fuck,
Yeah, there's so much more I could share, and other motorcycle accidents, and
I was just doing what I always do and just comparing and being like, this guy's way worse than me.
Exactly.
Way worse.
Way worse. There's no hope for him. But it's amazing, and I got my sponsor now, Captain Jack. Unfortunately, Fireman Tom passed away December 17th. out on the golf course. But Captain Jack, 54 years of sobriety. And, down here we pick our sponsors by the size of their boats.
Yeah.
And
He's got a big boat. Good.
And
We'll go fishing too,
He's
Tim.
got a canoe. He's got a canoe. Yeah.
And I tell you what a guy. I'm going to have lunch with him, late lunch today with him at 4 o'clock. And today marks 1 year that his wife passed away. You want to talk about the way this program works? Week before the last Hurricane Ian that came through, he came down and stayed with me here because his wife dies a week before the hurricane. Then his house get wiped out in the hurricane. But he calls, when he goes back home, he calls me up. He says, the boat's still on the dock. It's all good. And, it's just one of those things that how much can one man take? His daughter passed away, his wife of 62 years, they were married. And today is actually the day of her passing. So we're going to go out and get together.
Well, listen, you enjoy your lunch. Say hi to Captain
Jack.
Captain
okay,
Jack.
Buddy.
Fireman
You guys have
Tom,
always
Captain
got an
Jack.
invite down.
Yeah.
Here's the deal.
Down here.
Before you go.
Actually, I'll say last year, States was supposed to come down with Ryan.
I'll get him.
Okay.
I'll
with
get him to
Ryan
come
in
down.
that college
I was gonna.
thing
I
you
didn't
did.
know how cool you were until this fucking interview. Now I'm gonna come. Now I'm gonna come down for sure. Yeah.
So
Good. Looking forward to it.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the Raw Knuckles podcast. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe.